All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Zeke, and this is my speedrun of Phantom 2040 in 3410. Um, so, this is a project that's been in the works for a very long time, and only recently, I think this was about a month ago, I managed to break the world record. Um, and I'd succeeded in breaking it prior to this, but this run was much better and actually was recorded properly, so I figured I would go with this one. Um, Part of the reason why I'm making this video is because I have never met a single person who has ever heard of this game. And I mean, I'm sure there are people that know it exists, but I have never run into anyone who knows this game exists, and that shocks me because I think it's a really good game. Um, I think it's extremely enjoyable and worth playing, and I wanted to try and uh, just sort of increase the visibility of the game. So this is just a quick commentary. I really enjoy commentary videos on speedruns, so I figured I'd try to make my own. Um, so first things first, uh, important thing you're going to notice right here at the start is I'm going into the inventory to equip the same weapon twice. Uh, as far as I know, this is something that's unique to the Super Nintendo version, where you can actually double up on the weapon so you can fire it twice as fast. Alright, first boss. There's tons of bosses in this game. We do a very precise grapple here to position so that we can shoot it on its way up, which means you don't waste time of it flying back and forth. Saves, I think, between 13 and 17 seconds or something crazy like that. Um, whoops, a dumb map mistake. Um, it makes that little cackling sound if you don't accurately click on the place you're trying to go. All right, so first level with real movement. So you'll notice that I jump quite a bit, and oh, there you get to see it. If you're on the ground and you get shot by an enemy, you go into a little stagger animation. And that stagger animation cancels your sprint, and you sprint by double tapping. So if you get staggered, that wastes time, obviously, and it's very possible for you to mess up your double tap input and not sprint, and it's just a mess. That's the primary source of RNG in this game. Everything else is pretty set in stone, but getting bumped by enemies is based on their sort of random AI. Okay, so Graft fight. This guy's name is Graft. It's because he's grafted to different machines. We're going to fight him a ton in this run. There's a ton of Graft fights. So for some weapons in this game, you'll want to just hold down the fire button, and we'll get to that later, but you can actually mash the basic gun. And so mashing really effectively is super important if you want to get quick kills on the bosses and skip cycles. Alright, more movement, more jumping around. Oh, messed up my sprint, so I started walking a bit. But yeah, so the reason that I'm jumping a bunch, I might have just completely forget to mention this, is because you only get staggered while you're on the ground. If you're jumping through the air, the enemy shots won't stagger you. You'll still take damage, but you end up with some iframes. Alright, this is one of only 2 auto-scrollers in the game, so I'm just getting shot a ton. So I use this opportunity to get some pickups. So these pickups are energy or health refills. The ones that look like a battery are energy. The ones that have crosses on them are health. And then you'll see the little phantom heads that are 1-ups. These are super important over the course of the game because you have pretty limited resources to work with. You want to make sure that you have plenty of lives and health and energy refills to make sure you can go fast on the bosses. Okay, so this is, as far as I know, the only sequence break in the whole game. I just missed my grapple there. By using the melee attacks, you get a bunch of really interesting movement options. So like the punch lets you kill things, you have like a flying kick that lets you get more horizontal distance. But interestingly, the flying kick pushes your hitbox up a couple pixels. So you can actually grapple to the ceiling there. You're supposed to run to another screen, get an extension upgrade for the grappling hook, but we don't have to do any of that because we can just use the little kick to extend the range of our grapple. So pretty good movement there. I think this game has sort of like the instant fun button, which is the grappling hook. I think games with grappling hooks are pretty awesome, and this one has a lot of grappling movement. Oh, you also might have noticed I took my first death a moment ago, and that was a doozy. When you die, you don't. So the screen doesn't reset. Phantom just sort of like clutches his chest and falls to the ground, and that takes 3 seconds. But there's a lot of lag there, so it took probably closer to 5. And this is just another boss. You just mash. If you mash well enough, you can sort of kill him before he jumps the second time and saves you some time. Okay, so this game is interesting because it actually has a branching story path. In this case, you have to talk to this guy, Tracker, and he gives you information about where to go next. There are multiple endings in this game, and this category is... So it's any percent, but I guess technically you'd say it's good end percent. We're getting the good ending, we're making all the right choices, doing all the extra objectives. Okay, so here's an example of how I'm going to abuse iframes. I do it in other places, but by jumping here, I hit the truck while I'm still in the air, so I don't get staggered on my sprint. So there will be instances in the future where I'll try to be airborne when I get hit, so that when I land, I can continue jumping. Alright, so I could probably get into the story of this game, but long story short, you're a superhero, you're the Phantom. You get your powers from a strange idol. You're an anthropology grad student. I should know more about the story of this game, but I used to. I just, as I've sort of seen a bunch of people who speedrun, you kind of forget about the story of your game because you're so focused on the game itself. But I'm sure at some point I'll remember more of the story. Alright, so we're getting another power up here. This game is kind of like a Metroidvania sort of thing where, branching paths, a bunch of different places you can go, and you have to get certain power-ups to get to certain places. Unfortunately, it's not really interesting in this case. It's more of just a key in this case. You basically activate invisibility, and it lets you into this building. We save some time there by activating it immediately. It just teleports you over to the door. But since we're using it, I might as well talk about it. Invisibility is probably one of the most important pieces of tech in this game. While you're invisible, enemies do not react to you, but if you shoot, you become visible for a second, and then you get yours, because the enemies are Jedi. So I talked about it briefly, but there's not a lot of RNG in this game outside of enemy actions. Basically, when an enemy shows up on the screen, there's a number of different things they can do. I think there's probably 4 actions, as I've been playing through this, that I've seen. So they either are standing still, and they'll just continue to stand still, or they'll walk, or they will shoot, or they will walk and shoot. And you don't want anything where they shoot because they'll likely stagger you. Okay, fighting Graft again. I told you we're going to fight him a bunch. With precise positioning there, you can hit him the whole time, and here I mess up the quick kill really bad just because grappling mechanics. Sometimes the grapple doesn't grapple where you want it to, and you can, shoot him down before he goes through that extra cycle, so I waste a bunch of time there. But this run is by no means perfect, let's be clear. There are a lot of ways in which this run could be improved in minor ways, but the biggest time save would be quick kills on all the bosses. For most of the bosses, it turns out that their cycle takes about 13 seconds, and some of them take up to 25. So I think I get most of the quick kills in this, but there's 2 or 3 that could be improved on, so we could still probably save about 30 seconds from that. Alright, so now we're in the Phantom Jungle, the sewer jungles, basically. We're going to liberally use invisibility here, because there's a ton of enemies, and invisibility just means I don't have to deal with them shooting me down and wasting my health. Let's see, what else do I have to talk about here? So for the enemies, most of the enemy spawns are set. Flying enemies, though, will sort of come in. If there's no flying enemies on the screen, they will sort of continue to spawn as long as there's 1 or 2 on the screen. And if you kill enemies and hang out in a spot for too long, more enemies will spawn. But all of these walking enemies that you see, they're always going to be there. But again, their actions are somewhat random, so I try to be airborne a bunch. Oh, so I switched weapons. I'm now using the spread gun, and this is what we're going to use for the rest of the game. I'll talk a bit more about the swag swing there to save some time. Anyway, the spread gun is the best gun in the game, hands down, in terms of damage output. So I went into a cheat engine to sort of like take a look and do some looking at the game's sort of code and some of the damage values and health of enemies and whatnot, and found that the basic gun does like 1 damage. The spread gun does 5. And there are some other special weapons that we're just not going to use that do 2. But yeah, the spread gun is the most damaging by far. So if you just tap the button, it shoots 8 bullets. It shoots them in a spread, just in the eight directions. Each one of those only does 1 damage. Actually, no, that's wrong. They do 2 damage. But if you hit them with the main shot, if you hold down the fire button, it fires just 1 big bullet, and that bullet does 5. So now for the spread gun, there can only be 1 spread on screen at a time. So if I'm holding that down, it will fire a big bullet, and as soon as that big bullet's gone, it'll fire another one. Now, because I can double up on my weapons, I can technically have 2 of those spread shots in the air at any given time. So for most of the boss fights, we're going to be trying to position ourselves so that we can either mash directly on top of them to get as much damage as possible. So like for that example there, by mashing directly on top of Tracker, I'm actually hitting him for 6 damage if I do it properly, because 3 of these spread shots will hit him. And we can kill him before he even gets to jump once. But in this case, we're holding it down so that we can get the 5 damage shot, and I just mess up there. That will do more damage to the bosses than trying to mash, because boss hitboxes are a pain in the butt. So this guy, for example, his hitbox is... It appears that you can shoot the whole thing, but it's really just like the cockpit, and it's very hard to hit. In this case, he flies directly at eye level, so you can just shoot him. But in a refight later, that is not the case, and I will complain about that at that point. Okay, so I gotta catch up in my notes. This game goes at a sort of a breakneck pace. You're sort of just like flying through levels. There's tons of little like movement optimizations and weapon text and stuff that I could be talking about. And I mess up the quick swing there. You can grapple that edge and swing right under it smoothly and not have to land on the ground at all, but I dorked it up. So let me check my notes to see if I've missed anything. So I didn't mention this when we were in the runes last time, but some enemies are melee enemies, and I missed the elevator cycle here, and again, waste some time. But these sort of weird mutant things, the weird little mutants, if they're blocking, so they put their little arm up there, they don't have a hitbox or a hurt box. So you could just run right through them. But if they're moving or standing completely still and you run into them, you get staggered. So the best way to deal with them is just to mash jump and just hope that you land at good times. It's really hard to avoid them. Also, I want to point out that we're at the point in the game where, because we're not getting any power-ups really, like anything that upgrade our damage or armor, enemies do a lot of damage to us, and it is not feasible to kill basic enemies anymore. Even with the spread gun dealing 5, most of the enemies at this point have basically 6 health. So I take a death here just to get an energy refill, because I can't hit him anyway, because the little opening there is closed for most of the time. Mutant Head is a dumb boss. It's almost unavoidable in most cases to get hit by his claw hand. You're just always going to take damage. It's a right pain. And it's very easy to mess up this climb and start losing lives at a rapid pace. So thankfully that was pretty clean. We take the right-hand path just because it has better power-ups. Now we're in the space station. I told you things are going at a breakneck speed because we're skipping most of the story. So you might notice that the robots in this case, they're called biots. They are gold. Gold biots are super danger, and they fire those star shots that do a ton of damage. Some of the earlier biots we can kill, like the gray ones and the bluish ones, but the gold ones are, again, we can't feasibly kill any enemies at this point, so we just run like heck. Alright, So, also, I just want to say I love the music in these levels. I think that most of the music in this game is absolutely banging, so definitely recommend. Um, okay, what do we got here? Oh, another fight with Graft. This one is, for the longest time, I did not have a good way to do this fight cleanly, and I still don't do it really cleanly here. I, again, mess up my positioning. You can shoot straight down to hit him, but I think I get the right, yep, I get the right positioning here for a pretty quick kill. This one has more health than the original, so there's no real way to avoid this. Again, I run into a mine, take a death so I can get a refill since I can't shoot him anyway. And we got him. But yeah, so the floor moves, and it's hard to grapple to the ceiling because the ceiling is basically at maximum range for your grappling hook. If you remember, we were supposed to get a grapple upgrade, but we skipped that. So a lot of these grapples are not pixel perfect, but it's pretty close to be able to actually grapple onto some ceilings. One of the earlier boss fights with those little crab things in the jungle, there's a you legit cannot jump and grapple to the ceiling, which is what you need to do to fight one of them if you mess up the quick kill. So you just waste about 30 seconds while it flies around. I mess up my movement here and get hit by the truck. That's embarrassing. Oh, jeez. Yeah, anyway, we're back in the ruins. We're just running around, avoiding these enemies to the best of our ability. I do a little health refill there just to save lives. Lives matter a heck of a lot later in the game, because thus far, movement's been pretty... I mean, it's tight in some spots, but it's not super dangerous. That will change drastically later in the game. And movement will become terrifying. Alright, here's the most important time-saving part. This is super clean, and and I hit the wrong power up. Never mind, not clean at all. By jumping and landing in this sewage, we can just keep all of our momentum, which is super important. Same thing down here, and this saves a ton of time, because otherwise you're getting staggered constantly, and you'll lose a ton of time and possibly lives. And again, every time you lose a life, it's at least 3 seconds, maybe more, depending on lag. So avoiding deaths is important. Alright, so this boss. We blow up these boxes to save on lag at the start, but now we're just going to lag things out really hard and shoot him with the spread gun. And hopefully kill him in one cycle. And the panic menu there for no reason. Embarrassing. Alright, so here's a dumb thing. You don't talk to anybody there. There's a story decision, which is you either tell Tracker some information or you don't. So you don't actually have to talk to the other guy. His name's Guran. He's sort of like your mentor or something. You don't have to talk to him. You can just leave, which saves a bunch of time, and I feel stupid for not having known that in the past. Oh, I guess now's a good time to mention what those numbered things are, the terminals. Those are basically switches. So by shooting those, we actually open up doors in other parts of the level. You'll see some of these doors, right, are closed, like that one right there that we're passing by, number 3. You'd have to hit the terminal with the 3 on it to open that up. So I'm just shooting all the terminals that let me progress, not bothering with the other ones. Again, these levels are huge. There's tons of power-ups and extra weapons and all sorts of stuff scattered everywhere, but we're just skipping all of that. Okay, need some water. Okay, again, using invisibility here to skip enemies shooting me because these enemies are Jedis. I don't know why, but these guys are way worse than the robots, the biots. They will shoot you out of the sky for nothing. Okay, so swag strats here. So there is a melee attack in this game, and we don't really use it because it's not very useful, but it does have some interesting movement applications. And one of them, you get to see here, is if you do a flying kick and bounce off of an enemy, it boosts you up in the air. I have looked everywhere for places where this can save time, and it's pretty hard to find. And I whiffed there really bad. At least I got the one up. So rather than jumping on the heads of these guys, which wastes time, you can just grapple them. Their head, that little head, is a hitbox that you can grapple onto. So that saves you time by just swinging through there rather than jumping on each one of their heads individually. But yeah, so melee attacks are super cool. Like, there's a lot of interesting ways that you could speed up movement in the air, but it takes time to menu back and forth between them, and I'm sure that someone could find ways to shave seconds off by using really good melee attack movement, but I've tried it, and it seems like it would require extremely precise play to optimally move with melee attacks, and it wouldn't save you that much time after you were done menuing back and forth between weapons. Okay, so this is the Damocles cannon. I could let that thing hit me and hang there, but you don't get that many shots in because you get staggered by the laser. And since we don't have any armor upgrades, that thing kills you in 4 hits. It basically just depletes your entire health bar, and the entire length of the laser is 4 hits. I do tank it here though, because it's pretty close to dead, so I can save myself some time. Alright, so here we want full HP. So if you're doing this part, don't come in here with anything less than full HP, because if you thought the other enemies were damaging, these guys do a chunk. And you basically are just in a damage race here. Can you shoot him before they shoot you off the ceiling? The answer is usually no, if you don't have full health. So make sure you do that. Here I use a full health up because I was about to get shot, and I would have fallen down, and there's a ton of lag there because there's a bunch of enemies shooting. And I would have wasted like 5 or 6 seconds from the death animation. Alright, another graft fight. This fight is super irritating unless you just go under here. If you just go under here, then you're safe. And have some trouble positioning. Technically, if I was standing up, my spread gun would deal better DPS because, again, you can only have 1 of each bullet on the screen per gun at a time. So if I were standing up, they would connect faster. But the problem with standing up is that you get shot by things and staggered, and then you've got to readjust your position. So it's actually faster just to crouch there because you won't get staggered. They might interrupt your shots, but they won't like knock you out of position. So that saves you a lot of time. At this point, I was looking at my splits and saw that I was almost a minute ahead, and I honestly don't know where that came from. I think before I started seriously running to try and beat the world record, I was grinding boss fights just to try and shave cycles off where I could. But I guess my movement was just a lot cleaner than it has been, and my boss kills were pretty effective, so at this point I was completely stoked about this run, and I thought I was going to be able to crush the world record. Provided I didn't make any huge mistakes, and let me assure you, there are opportunities to lose a lot of time coming up, so we'll talk about those when we get there. Alright, so we are back in the Maximum Tower, and now we have the Hellevator. This is the dumbest thing. I don't know why this exists. So this is a 50-second auto-scroller. You just hang here, and these little wall-crawly robots come at you. So this seems pretty tedious, and it is, but it actually is terrifying if you miss a shot, because these guys will detach your grapple, and it's entirely possible that they'll detach your grapple, and when you try to re-grapple to the wall, you'll, hit another one of them, and then you just fall to your death and lose a life for no reason. So usually at this point in runs, I show off one of the weapon mechanics in this game, which is that you can combine weapons. If, for example, if I have the homing missile, which is something that we got in the jungle that you never saw, if I have the homing missile in one slot and the spread gun in the other, my spread shot will home. And that's really useful. Like, there's a lot of really interesting combinations of weapons in this game. But none of those combinations do as much damage as just having 2 spread guns equipped, so we don't use them, which is a damn shame. And I didn't show it off there because it takes time to menu, and I was trying to get as fast a pace as possible. Okay, so this is the Triad. This is in some way related to the weird mutants that we saw. Like, these are mutants with special powers that we have to fight because reasons. We fight them in this order just for good positioning. in the sort of the refight of them. So you fight each of them individually. You cannot kill this one by mashing. She has too much health. It's impossible for you to skip this cycle, which is really unfortunate. And trust me, it might seem like you're able to, but that's like a TAS-only thing, or someone who is much better at mashing than I am. So you fight, they're called the Triad because there's 3 of them, obviously. So you fight all 3 of them separately in these little rooms, and then you fight all 3 of them at once, which is, oh my god, I messed up. Fortunately, this is not a long cycle, but I didn't mash hard enough. But the fight with all 3 of them is actually pretty straightforward, because most of them don't do anything. They kind of have long periods where they just don't attack or move around. But your objective here is to mash really hard and kill them before they each take an action. Because if each one of them takes an action, they have a little attack where all 3 of them sort of combine together in the center of the room and do a bullet hell thing. And that wastes just a century of time. So as long as you mash them down before they can do that attack, you're fine. Okay, so right after I left there, there's a little ladder. You can take that ladder to end this part of the level and just skip right to the end game. But then you get a bad ending because you didn't do some optional things that you needed to do. So you can't just save a bunch of time getting to the end because it won't be a good ending. This is where the game starts to become kind of rude about grappling. So I'm taking it really slow here because the ceiling is uneven, and we have a very short grappling hook because we never got any power-ups. So it's very possible for you to be too close to the ceiling and hit your grapple, and then your grapple won't attach and you'll fall. And in the past, that's not been a big deal, but now you're grappling above bottomless pits, Ninja Gaiden style. So falling is a death, and I should note that this game used to be a lot scarier for me. I was really concerned about ever doing runs of this at live events potentially, because there is no there's no save system in this game. There is a password system, and that password is 40 characters long. Every time you finish a chapter, it gives you a passcode that's 40 characters long that you have to input, and that takes a very long time on a Super Nintendo controller. So if you game over, the run is dead. Okay, so here's the most obtuse part of the game, and my least favorite part by far. This is why I wanted lots of 1-ups. So this whole section here is a bottomless pit, and you have to go down here through that completely not obvious hole in the floor to go over here and blow up this computer. We also picked up a power-up. You might have noticed I kind of just went off to the left and died. That is the most powerful armor upgrade in the game. It is the 1/4 damage power-up. So yeah, all that damage we've been taking from enemies in the past, now 1/4 damage. Okay, so this is where things suck. So I attempt to grapple up through the floor, and it doesn't work. And that wastes a ton of time. It is possible to mess this up forever. This is why I take it very slowly here. Because for whatever reason, grappling up through that floor is a nightmare. You have to position yourself really precisely, or your grapple just won't connect, and you fall, and you lose a life, and you cry. I have had runs that have gone poorly end there, because you just fall your death a bunch, and there's nothing you can do about it. So yeah, I'll probably practice that more as time goes on, just so I'm not as freaked out about it. But, right, this is Sean 1. I mess up the grapple on the ceiling, because again, super short grappling hook. So his gimmick is the rotating part of his little platform means you can't hit him, as long as that is sort of blocking your shots. But if you are in his hitbox, you can just mash right over it. It is possible to 1-cycle him, or I guess 0-cycle him, but it is really difficult. But yeah, the 1-cycle's fine. I'm not too upset about it. Okay, so this is something that's a bit strange. So in this part, there are 5 batteries, basically. There's 5 containers that you have to destroy. If you destroy these 5 containers, you stop this cannon from firing. So we're on a space station. This is going to fire down at the city. And the objective here is sort of blow all these things up, and then this ends. Sean 1 is invincible during this time, so you don't even have to bother fighting him. But strangely enough, if you let the cannon fire, it does change the ending. But since it's still a good ending, if you wait for the cannon to fire, it wastes like 35 seconds. So unless I'm missing something, there's no reason to wait for the cannon to fire, because you still get a good ending. So if someone if someone who knows this game better than I can explain why both the TAS and certain previous runs have waited there, I would be happy to know. In either case, if it turns out that I have to actually leave it so the cannon fires for some reason, I will. Since it only wastes 35 seconds, I'm about 2 minutes ahead of the world record in this run, so I'd be more than happy to redo it properly and get the best ending. So it's a good thing that we got that 1/4 damage power up, because this fight is stupid. This is the worst part, well, the worst fight in the game, I think, because it is tedious and stupid. This guy has the most health of any boss in the game. I went and checked on damage values and HP values for bosses, and it's just a damage race. You just position yourself and shoot him when he's vulnerable, and tank hits. It's awful. But I don't have too many complaints about bosses in this game, except for that one. That one's stupid. Alright, so wouldn't be a Metroidvania game without a boss rush, so here's the boss rush. We're fighting Graft one more time, and it's the same as the first Graft fight, where he's in his little walker, except he's got a buttload more HP. So in this case, we're just going to mash really hard, because we can stand right next to him, so we can maximize damage that way. So the refights are weird, because they're almost exactly the same. But in this case, you can crouch and hit him. In the first fight, you have to stand up and shoot him, like, in the head. But for this one, you can just crouch and still hit him for some reason. I don't know why. I mean, I'm thankful for it. But right here, normally I don't get all these power-ups, because it takes time, obviously, but since I was low and needed them anyway, I figured why not, and extra safety for the final boss in case things went terribly wrong. So now we refight the Legbot, which is controlled by that sinister-looking guy. Again, it's story reasons. I'm not going to get into it. But so this refight is. I thought this refight was going to just waste a ton of time, but then I discovered that you can mash really hard and one-cycle it, technically. So unlike the first fight, where he's always at head level, in this one when he's flying back and forth, he's a little bit off-center, so you can't actually just shoot and hit him. You have to reposition yourself, and it's a right pain in the butt. But fortunately, by grappling the wall there, we can end up overlapping his hitbox and just mash spread and kill him before he can start flying around again. Again, wasting about 13 seconds each cycle. Okay, so final boss time. Okay, final boss. Has a bunch of different phases. Phase 1, we're going to do some more spread gun mashing to kill these arms and this head. Let me go to my notes, make sure that I remember everything. So we have to hit the head, or else we're going to waste a bunch of time, because if you kill the arms without killing the head first, there's like a little extra mini phase, and that's stupid. So right here, I just hit the head first before going onto the arm. And this is why power-ups matter a bunch, and why you need a bunch of extra energy ups and 1-ups, because you're going to need a ton of them for this fight to do it quickly. Okay, here's a fun gimmick. Guns do not work on these. You have to use melee attacks. It's the only time in the game where this happens. I don't know why it happens, but it does. So you have to kick and punch these things. You can save time by kicking and punching at the right time so you don't get staggered, but it's whatever. Like, just you just mash it. And here's a fun bit of rudeness. If you're on either of the sides, the floor falls away and you die. So I let it happen there. I did it intentionally so I could get a refill because I'm gonna need all my energy for this. So this is phase 3. He just sort of drops down, laughs at you, and you have to shoot these vertebrae. And that's a really clean kill there. Just doing it 3 cycles, super nice. And now the last part. This part is a nightmare. So the head flies around, sort of like a Mega Man Sigma head style, and you have to stay on top of it, and if you fall, it's a death. It will occasionally try to push you off by going into the walls. I just let it happen so I can get an energy refill. And other than that, you just mash really hard on the head, and bam. Time. That's the game. Oh, man. This run went actually pretty smoothly overall. It was very safe. I had plenty of resources left at the end. And yeah, I hope this wasn't too rambly. I just wanted to try and put out as much information as I could about this game because, again, as far as I'm aware, no one else knows this game exists except for some people who used to run it many years ago. I think that this record has stood for six years now, I want to say, 2014. I think the last time an active run was submitted was like 2016. So no one is playing this game, and I hope they will. While I'm really happy that I have the world record in this game, I am not an experienced speedrunner by any stretch. Like, I love speedrunning. I think it's super cool. But I am not nearly as good as most speedrunners. And what I really want to see is someone just break this game wide open. I want to see somebody find more sequence breaks, figure out some skips, find better strategies. I just want to see this game played really cleanly because it's super neat. It's got super good movement mechanics and a lot of interesting stuff that you can do. So yeah, that's Phantom 2040. I'm probably going to keep working on this game, just try to push the time down under 34, which should be perfectly doable. I don't know how low this game can actually go, but we'll find out, I guess. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you found this interesting, and hope that you might be interested in giving this game a shot. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. I'd be more than happy to answer them. All right, guys, have a good one.